up taking a peek at the steering wheel for the vehicle. So this is going to be a full walk around looking at all these different buttons and how everything works. So first thing to point out, the steering wheel itself is going to be a manual telescoping across the transit lineup. So we do have a little lever. Let me just crank it down a tiny little bit. So a little one just right in between our legs there. We're just going to crank that, drop her down, and we're telescopic so we can go in and out, up and down as necessary. And then take that, click it in order to log it back into place. But moving back up and looking at the wheels, so nice comfortable wheel overall, typical Ford styling with our Ford badge right along the very middle. And we've got our stick on the left hand side. There's a button on the very tip of that stick, so we can see that there. And that's the one that's going to turn our lane keeping system on or off. So you can see that toggling on or off there. We know it's on because obviously it's going to say on, but we do also have this little thing right on the very bottom. So I'm going to zoom in a tiny little bit there just so you can see it a teeny little bit easier. So we can toggle that system on or off very, very simply there. One of the benefits, so that system does work three individual ways. Way number one, if we start to veer over into a lane without signaling, we've got a little bit of a steering wheel shake. Way number two is it'll gently nudge us back into our lane. Way number three is it'll give us a little bit of both. So a few options, we can easily flash our high beams out. Stick on the right hand side is going to control our front windshield wipers. Now we do also have a few different options for our cruise control. So this is just going to be our base cruise control there, so we can set as necessary there. We've got the cancel and then limiter button on top of that. But one of the interesting things is that we do also have the option for the adaptive cruise control system. So this specific one obviously doesn't have it, but it's that set it and forget it cruise. And one of the great things about the adaptive cruise is that, let's say if you've got it set at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. If they pick up speed, change lanes, get out of the way, yours will pick right back up to your set speed again. So it's a very smart system, and that's just going to replace some of the base controls there if you had it as an option. But we do have a few other things there, so we can easily increase, decrease the volume for the radio there. We can also mute out by pushing this button along the bottom right-hand side. Off to the left, off to the left, the other right. Off to the right-hand side, a few other options available. So the very bottom one is going to be our voice command prompt. So this is an interesting one because we could press the voice command prompt. If we wanted to do things like change songs, radio stations, things like that using our voice, we'd have that option. But one of the cool things is that through this Sync 4 system, we could also do something basic. So we could also have this thing set up so that it would listen to our voice. So we could say, okay, Ford. And then we can have the voice command prompt come up that way instead. Now, if you want to walk through on that Sync 4 media screen, check down in the description below for that walkthrough instead. But this new screen, I absolutely love it. But hopping back into the steering wheel and cluster now. So a few other things to point out. We can change between songs or radio stations one at a time that way. We can also answer or hang up on a phone call if our phone was connected. Now, one of the great things is that we could also change between presets by moving left and right this way. Or what we could also do is we can also press and hold if we wanted to seek. So if we wanted to seek out to different stations that way, we've got the flexibility to be able to do it very, very simply, which I love it. I love that it's so easy to be able to do. And then, like I said, we can change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, all of our available presets there, simply by pressing left versus right side. Next up, we've got a series of other buttons. So we've got our basic back button, we've got this menu button, and then we can go up and down, and then we can also press OK. So if we ever get any messages on this screen, so look at that. So we've got our vehicle is on setting. We can also press the OK button there in order to get rid of anything that might be on that screen. So we just push this button in, and it's the same idea for resetting things like our trip counters and things like that. So I'm going to zoom in a tiny little bit, but just knowing all I'm doing is pressing the up-down button there, and then these ones off to the side. So it's going to move you up a little bit, and oh, there we go. Brighten you up a tiny little bit there as well. Perfect. All right, so let's kind of go through all of these different subscreens inside of the cluster. So we push actually, I guess we can go through the basics because we're here. If we ever want to reset our trip, all we do is just press and hold the OK button on the steering wheel. So a few seconds in, 3, 2, 1, reset all values very simply. We can now go down between different views. So we've got our digital speedometer, we've got our base driver assistant settings, we've got our navigation, what station's currently playing. If our phone was connected, we'd be able to see previously missed phone calls, we can make calls and things like that. And we've got some options for settings. Now, going between all these different menus is great, nice and easy. We can also push this button along the side of the steering wheel there. So we've got this individual button, which is going to give us some more options. So we've got our trip 1 versus 2. We've got our reset values, or we can also configure the view. So if we wanted to take out or add other things in, so if we wanted to get rid of distance to empty, things like that, we could easily do it. You can see some of them are grayed out, and that's just because we have a maximum that we're allowed. So we do have a few different options that we can select through there if we want to. and then we just push the back button in order to jump back. Same idea, back button to go there. And then if we go down, we've got our My View. So same idea. So on our My View, we now push the little 3 button along the side there. And then we can also look at our digital speedometer, fuel economy, or we can have it for a calming screen instead. So rather than our digital speed, nothing would show up, or we button press in order to go between any of these other options. We jump down into our driver assistance settings, and same idea, we've got some other options. So we can toggle traction control on or off. We've got our pre-collision assist system, so we can have the vehicle actively brake for us. So if it senses a potential collision, will it actively brake? Yes or no? Obviously no. You can see that it gives us a little indication that you're probably going to get into an accident, which I think is kind of funny it does that. And back from there, speed sign recognition, yes, no. And then we've got our lane keeping system, which I already explained to you on that one, and that's going to be the button on the tip of the left turning stick there. But what do we want it to do? Do we want it to be the alert, the aid, or the alert and the aid? And then we've got the intensity of the steering wheel shake, so a high normal or a low shake. So we can actually kind of see it and like hear it vibrating, which is kind of neat. It's kind of nice. And moving back, it almost honestly it reminds me of running over rumble pavement. That's what it feels like. Driver alert. So if we veer over too many times without signaling, we're eventually going to have the vehicle tell us we should probably take a break. And back from there, those are our base driver assistant settings. Options for navigation now, so same idea. So we just push this button in order to get to that screen, back and forth, etc. So we push this button, and we want to go to our home address, previous destinations. So if we've searched for addresses before, we can go to different favorites, nearby point of interest icons. And one of the cool things is that using that Sync 4 system, so even if we're on Sync 3, we could press the voice command prompt, and we could say navigate to Tim Hortons.
Please try again.
Ah, okay. I didn't pick it up because I was talking kind of in between, but we could say things like navigate to Tim Hortons, navigate to gas stations, and things like that if we wanted to. Or we could do it directly through the screen, so we can see point of interest nearby. Do we want gas stations, food, ATMs, hotels, and a number of other things. So quite a few different options that are available that we can kind of select through as necessary. Moving back and then into our media, we can now change between all of our presets, AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. If we had a USB stick with MP3s, that would show up as an option. If our cell phone was connected with audio, it would show up as an available option there on top of that. And moving down, we've got our phone, which no device connected. And then we've got our base vehicle settings there, which series of options that are available now. So we've got our base information, so we can see what's going on with our seatbelts. Now, one interesting thing, we could select all of these individual options, or we can now, because we're in one of the sub-menus, just push up and down in order to jump between other screens instead. So we've got our seatbelts that are currently plugged in, what's going on, so which wheel is getting which amount of power. And this is strictly for all-wheel drive, obviously, because we're intelligent all-wheel drive inside of this version of the Transit. Back down, we can see our tire pressure, and then we can also do an oil life reset if we want to. Back again, and back, we've got our options for display now, so we can change between English, Spanish, French, liters per 100, miles per gallon, Celsius or Fahrenheit, and change out a few other things there. Driver assistance settings, which we've already seen these ones. Some options for our vehicle settings, so things for chimes, do we want those happening? And helps if I go down to lighting. Auto high beam means that if the high beams are on, the vehicle's automatically going to dim them if it senses somebody's oncoming, and then it's going to bring them right back up again. We've got our auto lamp delay, so when we go to lock the vehicle, do our lamps just turn off automatically, or do they stay on for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or 120 seconds? And then options for our locks. So do we want the vehicle to automatically unlock when we come to a complete stop and turn the vehicle off? Do we want our feedback or mislock chirps, etc.? Global unlock for all doors, switch inhibitor as well, and remote start. So we do have the option of remote starting. If your key fob doesn't have remote start on it, you do have the option of using the Ford Pass app on either Android or iPhone devices, which means that you can remote start there instead, or you can turn the whole system off. But if we remote start, what happens? Do we let the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature should be, or is it based off of our last setting? And then the duration of the start, so 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Back again, we've got our wipers and the courtesy wipe. So if we've got our wiper cycle going, it's going to wait for a second on the last wipe, and then it's going to go one more time and clear away any excess liquid. And then we've also got our rain sensing wipers. And that, I believe, is it. I think that's it even for down there, yeah. But that is absolutely everything. So I know quite a little bit that was covered off there, but that's everything that you need to know about the steering wheel as well as the cluster inside of the Ford Transit van.